The college football playoff is upon us. We'll preview those 4 games on Thursday, but today it's time to empty our notebooks with our NFL draft buzz. Some topics we'll get to. First off, how does the 2025 wide receiver class stack up with recent years? Plus, the quarterback class takes another hit with Drew Allar going back to school. How does that affect this year's group? And finally, the 12-team college football playoff is littered with future NFL running backs. We'll rank all those guys today.
McShay, this might be the deepest running back class I've ever seen, and I've been doing this for 20 years.
Wow. Listen, it's playoff season in college football, week 16 in the NFL. And how many days until the NFL draft?
128.
Whew, it's getting scary now. Muench, you good?
I'm good, man.
All right, play that sweet music for me. It's a fun time of year, Mitch. And I say that because we've got the college football playoff coming up, right? And it's a first year, maiden voyage. We've got 4 games this week. We'll get to all those games on Thursday. I want to stop down, first of all, and thank everyone who's been joining us here. And we truly appreciate all the support we've gotten from the podcast, listening to on audio version, Spotify, Apple, wherever you get your podcasts. The YouTube channel continues to grow. We're excited about that. And we'll be back on Saturday night for our first ever college football playoff reaction show. Got the 1 game on Friday and then 3 games on Saturday. And once that third and final game, the 8 seed Ohio State versus 9 seed Tennessee, that primetime game's over, come join us. We're going to just come hang out. We're going to review all 4 of those games and start spinning it forward towards round 2 of the college football playoffs. Now, with all of that said, we're also excited on Thursday. As I mentioned, we'll preview the college football playoff games. And this isn't going to be the show where you get a lot of college coaches or NFL coaches for that matter. I'm not big on the coach speak and bring on guys that want to use this format and platform to recruit and say all the same things. But we kind of have a unique opportunity. Billy Napier, for 2 reasons, the Florida head coach, I wanted to bring on. One is, I think it was one of the truly remarkable coaching jobs this year, taking that team that was falling apart, splintering in front of our eyes, and all the talk about him getting fired and is he going to last the season, to turning it around and becoming a giant killer down the stretch, and watching him with DJ Lagway and developing that quarterback. So we want to talk to him about that process and just on a personal level, like what was this year like coaching for a guy who's been through a lot of different wars and a lot of different roles. Okay. The other part is talk about a unique perspective. And this is a real big reason why we want him on. He's coached against 3 of the college football playoff teams. So I want to pick his brain on Thursday. And I know you're excited about that too, Mitch. But today we figured it's kind of that in-between time, right? College football playoff games are coming up. We've got this one show on Tuesday, and we're thinking this is a good time with scouts coming off the road. All the information we're getting, all the conversations we're getting. Let's do a draft buzz. Let's just empty the notebook, see what we have so far. And I was talking to Tucker, one of our producers, before. GMs are the ones you want to talk to. And I had a conversation with a GM this morning. They're the ones you really want to talk to leading up to the draft, like February, March, April, because it's more about where teams are drafting, what players are going to go where, what are the team needs. Right now, I love talking to area scouts. They've been on the road for 4 months. They've been dissecting the tape, writing their reports, stacking their own boards to turn into general managers, talking to coaches, talking to the lunch lady or gentleman, talking, getting all the information that you could possibly get. And so there's a lot of good stories and a lot of good perspective. So with that in mind, and I mentioned Drew Allar, let's jump off there. Drew Allar decides to return to school. And I'm just looking at the quarterback rankings as we have them right now, okay?
Okay.
Shedeur Sanders from Colorado, number 1. Cam Ward from Miami, number 2. Garrett Nussmeier from LSU, if he were coming out in this year's draft, would be right there with Cam Ward and fighting for that number 2 spot, okay? Jalen Milroe, Alabama, undecided whether he's going to return or not. From all the information I've gotten, he's going to play in their bowl game, and we'll get to those decisions too. And then Drew Allar, I mean, I've talked to some scouts, interestingly enough, that thought that Allar was potentially a late first or early second. I don't know. I'm not there yet on him, but I do think that there's a lot of love in the NFL scouting community, but he's coming back.
Let's see how the playoff goes. I mean, if the playoff goes really well, he could have played himself into that range, certainly, I think. So I don't know if I would have had him there.
Just because he's made this decision now doesn't mean he's absolutely going to come back. But I think I don't think you make that announcement if you don't have the right NIL deal in place and you haven't thought this thing through a lot.
Yeah, my point is that he could play himself into that first round conversation. I think he goes back regardless. I don't have him in the first round either right now, but if he has a great playoff, we could have been having a different conversation.
Completely agree. Right. I also think two names that we've talked a lot about, Carson Beck from Georgia, up and down season. I think he's clearly in that kind of second tier of quarterbacks, as we've talked about, and Quinn Ewers. So all of those names, right? Sanders and Ward are absolutely in this draft class and project as first-round picks. I had a good conversation about those two this morning. I'll get back to that in a second. Milroe is undecided. Nussmeier's returning to school. Drew Allar is returning to school. So if Milroe returns, that's 3 potentially of the top 5 quarterback prospects. That's one way of looking at it. Boy, this depletes the quarterback class in 2025. The other way to look at it, and the way I'm really focused on it, to be honest, is how great is this for college football?
Right.
And how great is this for them as quarterbacks in their development, and how we've seen guys come in like Bo Nix with, at the time that he entered the draft, the most college starts of any quarterback ever. Dylan Gabriel has since, overtaken him there. But at the time, the most experience of any quarterback ever in college. Jaden Daniels with 56 starts in college, Arizona State, LSU, and the success they've had. For all the complaints about the NIL and the transfer portal, I think one of the great byproducts of all of it is that these quarterbacks get the opportunity, because of the financial benefit from returning to school, to actually develop the right way.
Yeah, I'm having the same thought, man. I think you're dead on. Let's take the optimistic, positive approach to this. I mean, sure, it does weaken this class, but I think it makes next year's class that much more interesting. And more importantly, for the individual, for the player, I mean, we're not heartless here. We want guys to succeed. And I think this is the best move for all of them. And I'll go ahead and say it. I don't know if you're going to get to it. I think it's in Milroe's best interest to go back too. And I hope that's the decision he kind of makes. But yeah, I'm excited for Nussmeier and Allar. Like that's great. Maybe and we've had this conversation. Maybe they come out this year and they're first round picks, Nussmeier and Allar, but they wouldn't go where they have the potential to go much earlier with strong seasons next year.
And more importantly, they're going to be more prepared to, because we say it Drake May wasn't going to play this year, right? Coming off of a tough 2023 season. He's one of the youngest quarterbacks of last year's group. Not ready. Let's sit him. And they did for 5 weeks, whatever it was.
Right.
And now they threw him in there. And thankfully, he had been through enough wars at UNC in just a few years starting, but he had been through enough wars. His talent is undeniable. And you see him seemingly progress each and every week. So I think all of the quarterbacks from last year, different ranges of experience, but they all had experience. And at least, I want to say at least 3 years, right?
Right.
I think the positive byproduct of all of this, Muench, is hopefully we won't have any more Anthony Richardsons with 13 starts. Hopefully we won't have any more Mitch Trubisky's with 13 starts, or Mark Sanchez with 13. You know what I mean?
Yeah, just play him and then get in the league. Yeah, that's a great idea. That has not proven to be a good model. It's just not. I mean, Anthony Richardson's a talented player. He's a hard worker. It just didn't play enough football coming out. And now we're seeing what happens when you try to, we'll just play him, and then they get into a team that doesn't really have the backbone to continue to do that. The whole thing was that Anthony Richardson was going to play a lot of football and learn on the fly. And the next thing you know, they're playing Flacco. Stay in school. You can make some money. You can play more football. I mean, again, it just pays off in the long run to take this approach.
Yeah. And it's fascinating. And we can, I want to talk, one of the things I want to talk to Billy Napier on Thursday is this transfer portal. James Franklin and I don't always see eye to eye on certain things, but his quotes this week, they ring true. We need a true governing body. We need a person or a small group of people running this operation. We need leadership in college football, because the fact that Bo Prabula was put in a position where he has to get in the portal and transfer now while your team's about to go make a run in the college football playoff. Like, what are we doing?
Right.
But Penn State might get it. They probably get in. But I don't know that it's 3 losses. Whether they got in or not, it wouldn't be with this route that they have, sitting at number 6 with SMU and Boise State to get into the semifinal. Had Prabula not come in and played as well as he did in the second half when Drew Allar got injured against Wisconsin. Right. So, like, his value for that team, if it was, and he played in certain situations, short yardage, goal line, here and there throughout the season. But if nothing else, his value in that game, had he come in and laid an egg, or had it been somebody else as the backup and they lost that game, the landscape would have changed for Penn State, And so it's not like he's some backup who only played in scrub duty, like 5-7 snaps here and there and blowouts. He contributed. And so the fact that now he can't be a part of that team and can't come in some short yardage and goal line as they're trying to make a run for the college football playoff and win a national championship, that's got to be devastating to him. But it's also like, it's the right decision given the situation, the circumstances we have. So change has to occur in college football. I'll be interested to hear what Billy Napier said. But we talked about today's going to be about notebook, draft buzz, empty the notebook, what we're hearing, and putting it in context with the tape study we've done and what we already know. Couple interesting things, and I'll jump off with this. As I mentioned, I want to continue to hammer this home. Milroe could go back. Nussmeier's coming back to LSU. Allar's now coming back to Penn State, okay? I talked to a person in the league. I tried my best not to disclose or have any information come back to the people we talked to. He said a very interesting thing to me. Quinn Ewers, he would love to see grad transfer, go somewhere else and play another year. Didn't have the year that we expected. Thought he was going to kind of continue to escalate from that Michigan game. Had the oblique injury, had the ankle injury. Just has not been 100% himself. And we've talked about that over and over throughout the year, right? But I thought that was interesting. And so while he made the comments recently that he's going to prepare for the NFL draft, and basically he's not coming back to Texas, I do wonder, given now the portal and where we are, what does that look like if he's not going to make that decision now? You know what I mean? And you look at his...
Today, he's not going to make that decision, is what you're saying.
Can you imagine the distraction it would be if Quinn said, I'm putting my name in the portal, but I'm going to play?
Right.
So I don't even know how the logistics on all of that. But to hear that from a high-ranking NFL official saying, I think it would be in his best, his best interest to return to school and go transfer somewhere else, play in a different system, showcase what he can do, hopefully be 100% for a full season next year, that would only benefit him. And you see, if you're watching on YouTube or watching this video, you can see the Quinn Ewers resume there. 19-4 past 2 seasons as a starter. The Georgia games have been his downfall. Has he been 100% this year? Banged up, inconsistent with his velocity. Pocket presence has been an issue at times. Not a running threat. Like, for as much as we love him and his competitiveness and the wars he's been in, and some of the big moments, you think about the Alabama games, like some of the big moments he's had, it's been a kind of a rocky road. So that's another interesting one as this college football playoff plays out. What is going to happen with Ewers when it all plays out?
I think there's 2 things to keep in mind. One is my understanding the portal won't close before the first playoff game. They'll play Clemson, so he doesn't have to put his name in before that game. And I don't see it happening. If there's an upset, it's kind of moot, and he can put his name in if he decided to do that after that, at that point. I do think he would have to put his name in if they get to the second round before. I mean, that would probably become public. My understanding of it, and again, this is all new, is my understanding that it would become public if he put his name in before the second round playoff game. That said, I love the idea because look what's happened. I mean, look what Jaden Daniels did after he went from Arizona State to LSU. Now, I get it. He's at Texas now. It's not like he's going from an Arizona State team that was kind of in rough shape and in going to an LSU. I get these already at Texas, but I mean,
and he's been coached very well. I mean, Sark's one of the best out there. The
no
NFL
question.
guys that he's produced, the NFL coaching he's had, Matt Ryan, etc. Like,
ask me if Kyle McCord regrets going to Syracuse after what happened at Ohio State last year. I mean, look, there's other models for this. Like if you look at McCord and what the year he had with Syracuse when he was at Ohio State and like, honestly, you look back at his numbers and you're like, why do we have to move on from Kyle McCord? Was he the problem in that situation? Like I know they lost to that Michigan team that won the national championship, but he was vilified for that game. Tell me who played better against Michigan in the last 2 years, Will Howard or Kyle McCord? So I look at him and I think he's a real interesting prospect that I really want to dig in on that Syracuse tape more to see how high he's going. But he's climbed, I think, this year because of that move that he made. So yeah, when I look at Ewers banged up a little bit this year, why not again go back and play more football, man? And maybe even if you're not improving your draft position, it's like you say, and I want to hammer this point home time and time again. Put yourself in better position for long-term success. So I love the idea of Ewers going back.
I also had a really interesting conversation with a NFL personnel person about Shedeur and Cam.
Okay.
And this person did a lot of work early on Shedeur. Okay. And I remember having a conversation, I want to say a month, maybe 5 weeks ago with the same person. And he said, I'm getting ready to go do Cam, hit me back up after so I can give you, I will never forget. He said, I haven't done all of his tape. I haven't dug in yet. It's part of, I'll get to him as part of our process soon. He said, but I do see there's a very clear difference in terms of the physical tools with Cam, especially the arm strength, than Shedeur. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I got, when you get the sense like he's leaning Cam, he likes Cam more than Shedeur, right? Like I absolutely hung up that phone and was like, he's leaning Cam over Shedeur.
Right.
Talked to him in the last 48 hours. And his exact quote was, "Oh yeah, Shedeur over Cam, and it's not really even close for me."
Yeah, I agree. Have you seen the same thing? It's
interesting for someone who kind of went into it with I don't want to say a bias, but like a lean. And then to be so, lying in the right. Cement with it. Okay. He said, and these are some of the notes. Okay. And pardon me for looking down, but I want to make sure I get it's right. Still agrees Cam Ward has the better tools than Shedeur. Okay. But from the neck up, he said, I want to make sure we're clear on this. I think Cam's an okay processor. I think he's fine, and I think he'll continue to develop. But from the neck up, Shedeur is a high level processor. He's like kept going on. He's like, he doesn't get mentally sped up. He kept saying it doesn't speed up. He goes, now sometimes that gets him in trouble because everything's kind of slow and everything's slow for him because he processes things so quickly. He said, now sometimes he gets himself into trouble because he thinks there's more there, and he just has such great instincts that he thinks he can create a bigger play when it's okay to check down. We've talked about all those things.
Right.
He's like, if I'm being honest, Shedeur, kind of average overall tools. Stuff we've talked about. Average arm, but it's plenty good enough to be successful at the next level. Better athlete in terms of extending in pocket presence than he is a runner. Too many chances with the ball at times. Drifts in the pocket, but he kept going back. He's like, but the mental. He goes, my goodness, the mental. His instincts, his processing ability. He's like, that's his special sauce. That's what makes him the best quarterback in this class. So hammered that home. He said with Cam, and this stuff was interesting. Cam, he thinks he's a better athlete than he really is. Right?
He's in his head now. I love it.
He said he's an okay processor. Like I don't like, I'm not worried about it. I think with continued development in an NFL system, but he kept saying he kind of needs to get outside the pocket. Like he kind of needs things to break down and to get sloppy for him to get sharpened. Again, better tools than Shedeur, but Shedeur is just a better pocket passer, better accuracy. He's like, at the end of the day, he said, and they're not one of them, but if I'm a franchise that needs a quarterback and I know that we have to start a guy year one, he goes, I do think Shedeur is going to be the better long-term quarterback, but I know that Shedeur is going to be the better quarterback early in his career. And if we're talking about drafting these guys top 10, what are we going to get early on? And let's not put somebody out there who's going to have a lot of struggles early on and it's going to affect their confidence.
Yeah, let me ask you this, and I would like to know that person's take as well, but I don't know if you got into this. If you were saying, I love these questions, right? You got one drive to win the game, right? You're down 4. You need a touchdown. Fourth quarter late, you get the ball. Who do you want as your quarterback? Do you want Cam Ward or Shedeur? And
he was dogging on Shedeur in that situation.
I would say the same thing, and there's not many quarterbacks I would take over Cam because Cam scares me. I do think Cam can make that mistake, and we've seen this before, where he can make a mistake that ends the game, right? But I also think, to quote my good friend Todd McShay, he's got the onions to make plays when he needs to, right? Like, he's got the onions. He's not a guy that's afraid. I think that's a strength for Cam. But when you're comparing the two, I still give Sanders the edge there because he's more calculated, more cold-blooded. He's seen those situations, maybe not as on the big stage, but like games, he just doesn't get rattled. Within game situations too. We talk about within snaps, within plays, does he get rattled? Do things speed up? Also within game situations, you're behind big and it's in the second quarter. Are you going to start pressing and try to, like the coaches will say, you can't get 14 points on one throw, man. Do you start pressing in that sense? I think Cam is more likely to do that than Shedeur is. Shedeur is more methodical. We'll dink and duck. We'll score here. We still can find a way back into this game. Or I don't need to push this ball downfield to get into a position for us to win this game late. I love that about Shedeur. I love his late game management.
Yeah. He was dogged about, and I didn't mention it there, but in clutch situations when you need it, he's the guy that I trust. And it's not that wasn't an indictment on Cam. I mean, look at Cam in big moments and the comebacks that he had to put together. Cal,
right?
Virginia Tech, like you're excited about both of them,
right?
And I think if you need like to drill a ball 40 yards down the field and get a special play, it's going to be Cam. But in terms of like consistency over time, the processors are the ones that will kill you and they'll carve you up. And that's what, and there's something, he's Shedeur's an assassin. So I just thought that was fascinating. And especially the draft rank or the draft order, it didn't really change much. We did the flash mock last week. And the top 4 picks did not change. It's still the Giants at 1, Raiders at 2, Patriots at 3, and who is it 4? But anyway, those are the top. Those were the top 3, and of the top
Cleveland
3,
maybe
Cleveland was down to 6. Tennessee was at 5. But regardless, the top 2 teams need a quarterback. And we had talked about, buzz about the Giants with Cam Ward and all that. I don't know if that's the deal, but I also, this part's fascinating, right? And we have to start putting things together now. And there's a lot of time in this process, but I have heard multiple times, Coach Prime does not want Shedeur going to New York. Jets
that surprises me. I guess the Jets doesn't. The Giants more so because it's such a big market.
And we could be wrong. And we'll have Coach Prime. I've said we'll have Coach Prime on at some point. We can talk to him. And I don't know that he'll share the exact organizations, but at some point, knowing his personality,
demeanor.
There's a good personality approach. I think that there's a good chance we'll get some specific teams out of him, or not just us, but everyone. But how does it play out, right? If the Giants view this the same as the person I just spoke with, and the same really as us, and the same as like a lot of people that I've talked to, that Shedeur is the number 1 guy.
Right.
They're picking at 1. They have a quarterback need that is glaring. The Raiders are at 2, and there's been a lot of ties. Mark Davis, the owner, Tom Brady Shedeur spent time last summer. Brady is a minority owner of the Raiders. Brady spent time with him, with Shedeur, kind of developing him and coaching him this past summer. There's a relationship there. We've seen stuff on social media. I mean, I even saw a video recently of Shedeur driving by the Raiders stadium and taking a video of it and not saying anything. Like, Put, tea leaves me, please. So the Raiders are at 2, and Shador's not going to Giants at 1. What do you do if you're the Giants? I've said all along, you just draft him at 1, and you put him up for auction, and you try to drive a price up to get to number 2, and then you draft Cam Ward at 2, or you go in a different direction, but at least you got some compensation for it. That's going to be fascinating.
Yeah, it scares me. But these are our personalities, by the way. You're comfortable doing
Yes.
that. Where I'm much more play it safe, right? This is who we are. Like, let me put you on the spot a little bit, just a little bit. What are you taking? For compensation? What are you happy with? Are you like a second, a third? If you get a third out of it to move back one spot, are you like, you know what, we got something? Or I kind of already know. I think you're going to be a little greedier. Like what would your thoughts be in terms of like, this is going to make us happy as an organization because we wanted the quarterback where we knew this quarterback was never going to play for us. We got the second best guy in this draft and we picked up these assets. What are you thinking?
I think it's second.
Yeah.
Trade value chart says
that's
a
not
second.
Crazy. Yeah, that's not crazy, right? You're not asking for too much.
It's 400. And again, this trade value chart is so,
dated, yeah.
You always, when you're drafting that high, you always get more. The trade value is 400. 400 equates to the 50th pick, mid second round.
Right.
I think a second, and it would probably be an early second. Obviously,
okay.
The Raiders then would have an early second. I think a second.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because again, we love Shador, but he's not in the top 3 last year. So, I mean, I want to keep that in mind. We're talking about what you're looking for in terms of compensation to move that. Because really, you were talking about picks, but we're really just talking about the asset at that point. We're talking about the player. I mean, you are talking about moving back from 1 to 2, but you're really talking about trading Shador Sanders because you've already taken him. So it's kind of a unique in that way a little bit.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm surprised you weren't greedier, by the way. But knowing you, I'm surprised you didn't want to ask for a little more.
Here's what, quite honestly, it would be a second and like a 5th or a 6th, or next year's first.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I would probably start off, but I would have more intelligent people in the building trying to coach me up on that. So again, some conversations. The quarterback class is weaker than it's been. There's no hiding that. There's no questioning that. The defensive line group, for everyone I've talked to, has gotten better and better as the years gone on, and is very interesting. Defensive tackle, basically sentiments across the board, better than we expected. Mm-hmm. And edge, the quotes I keep getting are like, a lot of these guys, different varieties. There's a lot of, so that was interesting. Running back, everyone you talk to, best running back class in a decade, best, deepest running back class I've ever had. So we're all on the same page.
The McShay Show is brought to you by FanDuel. The brand new playoff is here. This year, there's 12 teams, which means even more chances to win big on FanDuel. The action starts on December 20th, and right now, new customers on FanDuel can get $150 in bonus bets. Just place any $5 bet and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if you win. Use your bets on spreads, live bets, overs, unders, and so much more. Just visit FanDuel.com/McShay to download America's #1 sportsbook. Must be 21 or older and present in select states, or 18 and older and present in D.C. First online real money wager only. $5 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets, which expire 7 days after receipt. Restrictions apply. See terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com.
On the negative side, wide receiver class is not what it's been. So I kind of want to transition to that, if you will.
Okay.
Let's just go back over the last couple of years, okay? Wide receivers, and I want to start with just ripping off some names from the last few years. I think this wide receiver group, you can maybe compare it to 2023 with Jackson Smith and Jigba, Quentin Johnston, who took some time to kind of develop and come into his own, Zay Flowers, Jordan Addison, Jonathan Mingo, Jaden Reed, Rashee Rice, Marvin Mims were all the first and second rounders in that group. it's turned out to be a better group than we thought at the time. Is that fair to say?
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Puka was in that class too. He was later on.
Yeah, later on. Right. But my point in all of this is, my goodness, like, it has been a feeding ground. College football has been a feeding ground of wide receivers the last several years. And you just, like, looking at the college football playoff, all these teams that, like, literally you go down the list, it's like Ohio State's got them loaded. Oregon got them loaded. But other than that, like, what's the personnel weakness with all these? Clemson's gotten better. Wesco as a freshman stepped up. They've had a couple of guys step up. Texas has got a lot of depth, but not the single dude. And Isaiah Bond has been a major disappointment, especially recently. But the rest of these teams, it's like, Tennessee, if they just had a great number one. Arizona State, they lost Tyson, their number one guy, and don't have any receiver great talent beyond that. Georgia, huge hole at wide receiver. Boise State, Indiana, good receivers, lines up with their personnel. Notre Dame, what's the biggest glaring weakness? Don't have perimeter talent. Penn State, glaring weakness, don't have perimeter talent. So you see it in the college football playoff, and you see it in the NFL draft class. I just look at it like, just listen to these names, okay? The last 4 years. Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunes, Brian Thomas, Xavier Worthy, Ricky Pearsall, Xavier Leggett. I had all beyond that, Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, Ricky Pearsall. I had all of them last year, Mensch, in my top 37 overall. 10 guys in my top 37 overall. Go back to, I already mentioned 2023 with Jackson Smith and Jigma, Zay Flowers, Jaden Reed, all those guys. Rashee Rice. You mentioned Puka Nacua. 2021. I guess I missed 2022. 2022 was loaded. 2021, I guess it is. Yeah. Jamar Chase, Jalen Waddle, Devontae Smith. Kadarius Toney's been a bust, but Rashad Bateman, Elijah Moore, Rondale Moore, like, really talented group. The year before, Henry Ruggs, obviously horrible situation off the field, but unbelievably talented. Jerry Jeudy has come on recently. CD Lamb, star. Jalen Reagor, Justin Jefferson, star. Brandon Ayuk, star. Like, Michael Pittman, stud. T. Higgins, stud. Like, it's wild. All these wide receivers that have come into the league from college football the last 5 years. This year's group is different. I want to start with this. Travis Hunter, we've got as a wide receiver and as a cornerback. He's a different animal, and we can get to Travis in a minute. But Tetairoa McMillan from Arizona and Luther Burden III from Missouri are widely considered the top two receivers in the class. I look at last year's group, and let's just do with the wide receiver classes we've done with the quarterback class a lot, and let's kind of mesh them in.
Okay.
Where do these guys go? And I've got a lot of notes on these receivers, and we'll get to who they are. But where do these guys fit in with last year's group? Not ahead of Malik Neighbors, who I had as a number one receiver, just slightly ahead of Harrison. I had a number 3 in the class overall was Malik Neighbors. Number 4 in the class overall in terms of my ranking was Marvin Harrison Jr. Number 8 in the class overall was Rome Odunze. Number 19 was Brian Thomas Jr., and he's been sensational. Right?
Yeah, he's been awesome.
And then A.D. Mitchell, Xavier Leggett, Ladd McConkey, like, phenomenal this year. Keon Coleman and Ricky Pearsall. So where's the jumping off point with McMillan and Burden as the two pure wide receivers in this class when you have Neighbors, Harrison, Odunze, Brian Thomas Jr.?
After them. I mean, can I just tell you what's the most interesting thing about me? Because I'm hearing you and I'm going to answer your question, but this is what's burning in my mind right now.
Go.
Because it's most fascinating to me is, where do you have Travis Hunter versus Malik Neighbors? That to me is the most interesting question about this class, because I think I have Neighbors ahead of Hunter. I think he would be the third receiver taken. Yeah, so you do too.
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked. Yes.
Yeah,
if he's only playing wide receiver,
Travis
Hunter is the third receiver in last year's class.
Okay, so we agree. I totally agree. I mean,
I don't know that everyone else would, but we just said we agree on that.
Yeah, we're on the same page there. Okay, so for the other two, I like McMillan way more than Burden, by the way. I have Burden as I think my 5th receiver. I have Trey Harris ahead of him. I'm low on Burden. I was low on Burden coming into the year. But I think for any of these receivers outside of Hunter, I mean, man, you can keep going. I mean, I'm not taking them ahead of the top 3. I'm not taking them ahead of the top 4. And Brian Thomas went 23rd overall. Xavier Worthy, I wasn't as high on last year. I thought he was inconsistent with his hands. He's had a nice year. He's not, I mean, I don't know if you could really say that he was worth the 28th pick, but he's had a nice year. I mean, he's run the ball pretty well. I think he's got about around 500 yards receiving. He's had a decent year. I'm not sure I'm drafting any of these guys ahead of Worthy. So, look, I don't know. Ricky Pearsall, I felt like I was low on after watching him more last year, and his situation this year has been tough, so it's kind of hard to evaluate where he is. But like, it's just, again, there's just no comparing. I loved Ladd McConkey. I loved Keon Coleman. Like,
Yeah,
those guys, if they're in this class, all of those guys are potentially the number 2 receiver. They're in the conversation. Maybe you take, I like McMillan, maybe more than a lot of other people. I think you could probably talk about McMillan in that Worthy Pearsall range, but I think there's a debate. I don't know if you're like, no, McMillan's definitely ahead of Worthy or definitely ahead of Pearsall.
the conversation for me is after Brian Thomas Jr.
Yeah, that's when you have a debate.
And remember, Brian Thomas Jr., like it's hard, and we have to go back to how we evaluated it. I had him 19 overall in a really good class last year with a bunch of quarterbacks, don't forget. So like a 19 overall in that class was the top 10 in this class, okay?
Right.
I don't have either of the wide receivers from this class in the top 10, but I recognize, because I don't travel a lot anymore. I'm not out doing games during this. Like I read more. I don't factor it into anything I do, but I see like everyone. It seems like everyone has them like top.
I don't know,
5,
apply it anywhere, but
10.
yeah.
So with that said, but to me, Neighbors, Harrison Jr., Roma Dunze, and Brian Thomas Jr. would all be ahead of McMillan and Burden in this class.
Yep. I agree.
All right. But
and it may be more than that. That's all I'm saying. It may be farther down than that. And I don't think Burden, listen, I'm just not as high on Burden. I think he's a good player. I mean, again, keep it in perspective. I think he's a day 2 wide receiver. I just don't think he's a first round guy.
I want to get into some notes on these guys.
Okay.
I will say, and I'm glad you brought Travis Hunter up, because that's a fascinating conversation. The more people I talk to in the league, we had a really good conversation a couple weeks back when we broke down Travis Hunter. You handled him as a corner,
Mm-hmm.
and I did as a wide receiver.
Correct.
And evaluated him separately as prospects. We both said that we thought he was a little bit more advanced, surprising. It was surprising at wide receiver, and we both agreed that there's more value at wide receiver in today's game. The more conversation, and I think it will be team driven and what they need. I talked about the Patriots, like you already drafted Christian Gonzalez. He's playing at one cornerback spot. Maybe if you draft Travis Hunter, he's a wide receiver weapon for a young quarterback that desperately needs weapons, and you utilize him in a limited role as like a slot corner. Pardon me, I'm battling through being sick. I said to you yesterday, I'm fighting, so I apologize for an occasional sniffle. I'm starting. I said this to you yesterday. I'm starting to think that kids should all go to boarding school.
I wasn't sure you're going to go public with that one.
I'm joking. I obviously would never even consider it. But my goodness, the petri dishes that they are coming home from school.
They're like pigeons.
But Travis Hunter, let's not digress. Travis Hunter, the more people I've talked to in the league, and we also had this conversation. If you want to play him on both sides and you want to get that value, it's got to be cornerback first with a limited package at wide receiver. I think to bring him in and play him full-time wide receiver and just kind of throw him out at cornerback early in his career is a disservice to him. And I don't know that would work as well. So interestingly enough, in the conversations I've had in the last couple of weeks, more teams, not all, but more teams are leaning towards Travis Hunter as a cornerback that plays as a receiver.
Interesting. If I'm his agent, I'm telling him we're playing wide receiver, man. and we're going to focus on wide receiver because I think it gives you, or I'm not telling him what to do, but I would say I think you should play wide receiver because it gives you the best chance to extend your career. You just focus on wide receiver. That's it. Gives you the best chance to extend your career. I know. Listen, hear me out. Gives you the best chance to extend your career and then make the most money. Now, I think the conversation switches to he says, I want to play both ends. And then you say, look, man, he's just the kind of human being. These are rare people on this planet. They do things that no one else can do. And if he says to me, I'm going to play both ends, I'm like, you know what, man, if there's anyone who's going to prove me wrong about this, it's going to be you. Go ahead. But if you're looking at it from strictly a business standpoint, I'm telling him to focus on wide receiver. Now, does it hurt his value? Maybe a little bit. He's still going to go early first round in this class. I'm telling you.
Well, if I'm his agent, it's two different conversations.
Mm-hmm.
It's publicly, I'm playing both. But I'm a thoroughbred. I'm somebody you've never seen before, and I'm going to be the first to do it. I'm playing both, and that's my entire message. Hopefully, we'll get Travis on. We talked about hopefully getting him on at some point this week. It's been busy. Won the Heisman. Congratulations.
Got a couple of things going on.
One of the most authentic speeches I've ever seen. That was awesome.
My kid called me about it. Yeah,
but hopefully we'll get him on in the next couple of weeks. And I don't want to. This is not again. We're not a lot of coaches interviews, not a lot of player interviews, but to me, he's just so unique. But I'm guessing that he will be coached too. And here's the thing. I don't think there's any coaching that has to go on. I think Travis Hunter absolutely believes and knows in the bottom of his heart he is going to play cornerback and wide receiver in the NFL. And that if you're drafting me, you better understand I'm doing both. Part of my value, part of my greatness is the fact that I can do both. And nobody has ever done it. We talked about Champ Bailey. He had like 8 catches in his career. I have those numbers somewhere here, somewhere. Deion Sanders had like 40 catches or something throughout his NFL career. We went down all the guys who have tried to do it, and it's like 2 catches, 6. Charles Woodson. I think he had 2 catches in his entire NFL career. I'm different. That's my messaging. I'm different than those guys. I'm the first to ever do it this way. So I truly believe, and I'll be fascinated to talk to him as we get closer to the draft. I truly believe that's going to be his messaging. Now, to NFL teams, and he's probably not going to interview with a ton of them. They're going to have their own unique plans, Shedeur and Travis. To NFL teams, yeah, let's get in the nitty-gritty here. How would you, and it might be part of what decides where Coach Prime and Travis think is the best spot. It's almost like recruiting. Like, yeah, we'll play at wide receiver, but when you come in here, we're gonna move you to cornerback, Nick Saban style. You know what I mean? Yeah. So I think those conversations will be interesting and may factor into the wish list, if you will. But absolutely, the messaging, I'll be shocked if it's anything other than I'm doing both. And you know what? I might return punts too. Like, go ahead, stop me. Yeah, stop me. Right?
He can do it. I mean, he can do it. And he's 100% right that he is the only one to do it so far. And I am playing it safe. But man, I think it's the best way to make the most money. Because I don't think it's going to be interesting to how he sets the market. How does a player like him set the market? And I think there's going to be a lot of pushback from NFL owners to put, it's one thing for Ohtani to get the kind of money he gets in the MLB because of their salary structures. It's going to be tougher to to spend that much player with that kind of a hard cap. So I'm interested to see what he sets the market with. And there's no reason to believe he won't be super successful. Let's say he goes for his first 5 years and he's everything that we think he's going to be. That second contract, I can't wait to have that conversation with you, man. What's that number going to look like? And how do you, what do you value a player there? And I know we're getting way ahead of ourselves, but this is how my mind works. And I'm excited to see what that looks like and what kind of conversation we'll be having then.
All right. So Travis is a unicorn, and we'll talk about him as corner, receiver, maybe punt returner, and all the different things. But pure wide receivers, we talked about it. Tetairoa, McMillan, and Luther Burden III. Let's start with those guys. Here are some notes that I've gotten on those 2 guys, okay?
Okay.
McMillan, 6'5", 212. I said to one personnel person, I think best case, everything works out perfectly. Best case, I would go with a Drake London comp.
Huh.
6'5",
I get
212.
that. I don't hate that comp.
Athletic after the catch. Not for the massive guy, not as he's great uncontested, but I don't think as good as Drake. I mean, Drake was phenomenal. The basketball background, maybe the best I've ever among the best, not the best I've among when you think contested catches, who are the guys coming out of the draft? I'm like, Drake's one of them, right? But also the yards after catch at that size looks more fluid and more dangerous after catch. The ball skills. Cortland Sutton is another name that came up as like best case scenario.
Right.
Okay.
I like that one.
But here are some of the notes. Because more often than not, talking to people in the league, and it hasn't been it's not 20 guys, it's just a few. There were more questions than like definitive, like this is my guy, like I love him, The questions were the route tree. It's not there as a route in terms of the route tree. One quote I got, jogs a lot.
Huh.
Yeah. And route tempo, question mark is the note I put down. Full route tree. No, that's another quote. Like full route tree. No, he's just not there.
Just a no.
Yeah. Can he win out? This was interesting. Can he win on the outside enough? He said, if you really study their tape, there's a lot of motions. There's a lot of helping him get off the line. Can he win? If you're just plugging him an outside receiver as the X, 6'5", 212, he should just be your X, right?
Yeah.
Can he win on his own enough on the outside? Just planted there. I thought that was interesting. Again, not everything I'm saying.
Very interested. Yeah.
These are things that I'm getting from guys that have spent the last 4 months digging into these players. Can't live on the 50-50. I think he's good uncontested.
Yeah.
No, sorry. This is where I need to make sure I read my notes properly.
Right.
He's good uncontested is what he was saying, but you can't live on 50-50 balls in the NFL. You go, so if he doesn't develop as a route runner and become more consistent with his tempo of routes and his getting off the line of scrimmage, he said he can drop his hips. He's like, he can get in and out of his breaks. I'm not worried about that part, but refining his route running skills, understanding what's expected of him, getting off the line of scrimmage against press corners on the outside in the NFL. If he doesn't improve in those areas, he's going to have to rely on 50-50 balls like too high of a percentage of time. And you can't live on that in the NFL is what this guy was saying. And he said all day long he would take Drake. If we were back in the draft and had both of them available, all day long he would take Drake over McMillan.
Wow.
Yeah.
I'm not seeing it. I don't see it the same way. It's good to hear that. This is what's great when you hear stuff like that is it's time to go back and look. You don't want to be overly influenced by what you're hearing from you don't want to be overly influenced by what you hear from these people, but it's also a good reminder of like, hey man, some people aren't seeing it the same way that you are. Maybe you should go back because I think he can win on the outside. I know what he's saying. It's true. What they do with him, but I think he can win on the outside. I think he can get off press. I think he can win deep. Wow. I mean, I'm low on this receiver class, but wow, that's not
but I just want to preface he still likes him a lot. So knows he's I know. But you also got to remember who we're talking to. They're not all angry, miserable, but like they've been on the road for 4 months away from their family, staying at like,
they're tired of hearing guys like us
hotel. Yeah, like, it's not the most comfortable bed, not luxurious rental cars. Like it's been a grind. So there's a little bit of like, Luther Burden. Let's transition to him. Most people have him as the number 2 receiver. What is he? 5'11" and change?
He would be the number 3 receiver, I think, because of Hunter. Or no, now he would Hunter corner. I'll look up his height right now.
I think it's 5'11"
he's undersized.
Right, just over 200 pounds.
5'11", 205 is what I got.
Yep, 208 is what I had. Production not there in a terrible Missouri pass game this year, as we all can agree on that. Not great when the ball's in the air. That's the difference between he and some of these other guys. Not great when the ball's in the air. Contested catches, just not his thing as much. Struggles adjusting sometimes, but phenomenal athlete. It shows up on tape, but it doesn't show up in production this year. But his body some like the slot fade stuff that he does his ability to to maneuver, get in position, after the catch, dangerous, kind of all the
Candidate
things.
for the McShay all satellite team, maybe. I think
Yeah,
he's a candidate. Yeah,
yeah,
he's a guy you want to get in space.
absolutely. So very different receivers. You're talking about a guy who's explosive, can create after the catch, going to kind of have to manufacture some things versus McMillan, contested balls, unbelievable highlight reel, 6'5", 212 frame, just very, very different receivers.
Yeah, I agree. It's interesting to see. This is kind of a preference thing. I don't value the undersized slot receivers as much as I do the bigger guys on the outside, because I just see when you look at today's game, like, you're going to work Justin Jefferson into the slot in certain situations. You're going to take that number 2 receiver and kind of kick him in. That's the thing with Burden for me, is how much is he going to win on the outside in the NFL? And I think a lot of the same things you were saying about McMillan apply to him in terms of the way they move him around, the way they motion him, the way they help him. And look, like, let's give him some credit. The catch he had that almost beat South Carolina against the slot, and he made this over the shoulder, one-handed left hand grab.
Yep.
That's amazing. That was a great play and an example of something he can do, but that's not something he's going to be consistently doing against NFL competition, I don't think. So yeah, I was a little lower on Burden coming in. I haven't seen enough this year to make me feel any different. And last year, his numbers were awesome, by the way. I mean, this year it's like 600 yards. Last year was 1,200 yards. He had a much better year last year, and people should probably keep that in mind. But again, these are not the guys where I'm like, I'm super excited if my team drafts this player in the first round.
Yeah. Yeah. I totally agree. I going beyond just those receivers, some other interesting notes. Emeka Egbuka, Ohio State. Interesting. And I felt the same way. One of the guys I talked to was like, "Did you like his tape last year?" I was like, "Not really." He goes, because coming into the year, I really didn't. He goes, "But he's grown on me." And I think that's kind of the sentiment across. Like, I wouldn't say anything about him physically is elite or special, but when you combine the whole package of work, the body of work, then you get excited. The one thing that one of the people I spoke to was, I just know he's not going to fail.
Right.
Highest floor. Those are some of the things. Highest floor of all these receivers.
Love those players.
Routes are phenomenal. Maybe the best route runner in this class. Ball skills, phenomenal. Reliability for his quarterback. Everything that you look for. Most efficient. Maybe the most well-coached in terms. Obviously, Brian Hartline does a phenomenal job there. There's no denying that. But what he's absorbed from that. You know, just because you're there playing under him doesn't mean you're absorbing it. He thinks he goes in the league as probably the most well-coached receiver in this class. I also mentioned great blocker for
what it's worth.
that care, for what it's worth. Great blocker. Michigan State tape was one thing that was pointed out by one of the guys I talked to. Two other brackets here of notes. Savion Williams is a player to keep an eye on. A lot of mixed opinions. The TCU wide receiver. Never been like phenomenal talent. Never been phenomenal production, but phenomenal talent. He was on the on Feldman's freak list.
Okay.
He's 6'3", 228 pounds. Everyone I've talked to, there are differing opinions on what he's going to be in the league, where he is right now and all that. But Savion Williams from TCU, everyone agrees he's going to be wherever you have him right now, he's going to be a riser throughout this process. Some people, one person I talked to said, Cordero Patterson. Could be that. And the reason, I think we all are looking for that comp. The other one, I just spoke to someone this morning. They're like, "Yeah, I know, I hear you. I understand why someone would say that. I've got Laviska Shenault 2.0.
Okay,
not that impressed. Worried. Okay,
right.
But the reason we say this is high school quarterback apparently could throw like 75, 80 yards in the air. Like just one of those naturally gifted. Like God only makes a handful of these types of people in the world, right?
Right.
Has played wildcat quarterback, pure running back, slot receiver, outside receiver, like can do a little bit of all of that. Really good, effective running the ball. 6'3", 228. Apparently like 10-6 broad jump, 42-inch vertical. It's just unbelievable natural tools. Accepted the invite to the Senior Bowl. That'll be fun to watch him that week there. But he's a player with very mixed opinions, but could be kind of skyrocketing as we get closer to the draft. The other receivers that I talked to one guy this morning about. Oregon. Very interesting conversation. Tez is so explosive. I love Tez Johnson's tape. I think he's the best receiver on that team. I think he's the most
there's
valuable.
A butt coming here, man.
Oh, there's
a
butt
coming. Damn it!
But is the quote from one guy like, "I hate smaller receivers, so I just can't get on. I can't get on board." And he made a good point. He's like, "Go through." He goes, "Any given year, go through the list of wide receivers that are top 10 in receiving, top 10 in receiving yards, top 10 yards. Like
he's 100% right.
I can't. He's like, I can't. He goes, I can love Tez Johnson. I can be unbelievably excited about what he does and see all the flashes that everybody else sees. But at the same time, I'm allowed to he's not my guy.
He's not wrong.
And it's not anything towards Tez. It's just historically, I'm not going to gamble on that guy. Interesting. I thought that was fascinating. He's like, I would take him 4th round. I could see him going 3rd. He goes, you want to know
4th round? Wow.
I know.
I love this stuff.
I know. And then he goes, but the dude on that team, he goes, it hasn't shown up every week and there's inconsistency. He's like, but Evan Stewart is nice, is the quote I got.
Really?
Evan Stewart is like, my goodness, he's got skills. That's what he's like. He's like, he is so talented. He said 2nd round for Evan Stewart, 3rd, 4th for Tez Johnson. He goes, you want to know why Evan Stewart's not going to be in the first outside of the production? And this is like, take it for what it's worth. We're not here like bad. He's like, he's a good kid. He goes, he's a good kid. He goes, I'm not worried about him. Like, he's not a bad guy, bad kid, anything like that. He's a good kid. I like him. He goes, but he's still a kid. Got some maturing to do. He's like, I'm not that old. He's like, I got a lot of older guys in the building, besides me. He goes, but this is truly a Gen Zer. This is an NIL, entitlement, all that stuff. And he's like, he goes, and I don't want you to like say just this is specific to Evan Stewart. Like there's more of these than there are not in terms of scouting these days. So it's just about, do we have the right people in place, the right leadership in place? Is like, do we have a wide receiver coach who's going to get the most of them? He goes, but it was just interesting because like Tez has been on a tear. Tez was phenomenal against Penn State. Tez is so explosive, right? But he was like, no, Evan Stewart's the guy.
I want to push back. This reminds me of so many conversations I've had with you where I start yelling at you and you're like, dude, this is what I'm being told. This is not what I'm saying to you. But I mean, Evan Stewart's 6 foot 175. I mean, he's not this huge target. I mean, he's a thinner, leaner guy who's 2 inches taller than Tez. Give me Tez. And again, I get it though. I do. I've had this, when Elijah Moore came out, I loved Elijah Moore's tape, man. Best hands of maybe a slot receiver I've ever seen. And how's that worked out? And that's the thing. People kept saying he's a 1st round pick. I was like, a slot receiver as a 1st round pick, man. Same thing with Burden, by the way. Do you think Burden's playing on the outside in the NFL? I think he's a slot. So I get the argument. I just love Tez so much that I want him to be the outlier. You know what I mean?
Totally. I mean, Jordan Addison was undersized. Zay Flowers undersized.
Tyreek's not that big, right?
No, he's not that big. But they're all kind of built. Like Ladd McConkey's built.
Yeah.
He's not that big. But he's built. I think it was more about like the lanky lean. And there's always, but you look at
he's been hurt this year.
Is how great is Xavier going to be for a 1st round pick? Lanky, lean, pushed around, contested. Can he stay healthy? All, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I think that's more the discussion than it is about like shorter frame. Like, you know what I mean?
I agree.
Elijah Moore, as you mentioned. Yeah, it's interesting. I always find these conversations to be fascinating. There's like, think about all the different perspectives and side notes. From the defensive line class talking about how like defensive tackles a lot better than you expected. The edge guys, the depth there, a bunch of different guys. That's where this class is loaded. The running back class is loaded. The wide receiver class is not what it's been, but there's still guys to be had in the in the second, third, fourth round.
Can I give you a day 3 under the radar guy for the receivers?
Please.
Colorado State's Torrey Horton, who had a knee injury this year and kind of I think he's kind of disappeared a little bit because of that. Previous 2 years, over 1,000 yards receiving. He's had a punt return touchdown in each of the last 3 years. So each year of the last 3 years, he had a punt return touchdown. He's lanky. He's lean, but he's got a big frame. I like the way he catches the ball. I like his understanding as a route runner. He's not an explosive route runner, but he kind of knows how to get open and settle and all of those things. Great ball skills. To me, someone, we'll see if he's healthy enough to run, because that's the thing. I don't think he's going to run well, and that time will be a big deal for him. So if he's not able to run, teams are going to have to start making decisions about that. But I keep thinking about Keon Coleman last year, and I'm not saying Torrey Horton's Keon Coleman. What was fascinating to me is, if you remember, Keon Coleman didn't run well, right? He was in the low 4.6s. But remember his now the combine, they do the gauntlet times.
Yeah.
And he had the fastest gauntlet at the combine. I want to see those times. I'm more into the Jim Nagy.
For those who are listening or watching, it's the gauntlet is when you're catching the ball, right? Back, forth.
Right.
That's what you're referencing.
You see guys get tagged in the face when they don't know what's coming.
Yeah, and some guys kind of jog through, don't go full speed,
right,
drop the ball, fight it,
yeah.
drift in and out the line. Yeah.
Which affects your time. And Keon Coleman crushed that drill.
It shows body control and how, and I always talk about speed. Is it easy speed? Or is it a struggle to get to that speed?
Right.
Like we've all been running fast where like everything's blurry, right? Some guys don't have that same blur as the average man, like you and I probably do, where like you're running too fast, your head's bobbing, and
right. We're all over the place.
Some guys just have really easy speed, and Keon was one of those guys.
I wonder, just kind of that deal. The 40 times are always going to be important, but I like these. Like I want to see the Jim Nagy times at the Senior Bowl when these guys are practicing.
The miles per hour.
Yeah, that stuff is a big deal now, I think, in the gauntlet times, and when they're actually doing a football activity. How fast is this guy moving? So that's something that could be interesting for him if he's able to do any of those things. But again, he is coming off a knee injury, so that might not happen for him.
Yeah, Cooper Kupp was one of the all-time examples at the Senior Bowl. Like, yeah, he ran a 4.62, was it 4.65, somewhere in that range?
Right,
maybe 4.68. It wasn't good. I remember being like,
he's done all right.
That's what everyone told us. But at the Senior Bowl, his speed was like, no, I didn't have a question. Running routes, getting in and out, the efficiency, all of that. All right, so running back, we talked about it. Everyone agrees. Like 20 years, 25 years, 30 years, like one of the deepest groups ever. And everyone agreed, okay? I want to spin this forward to the college football playoff. And to me, it's one of those storylines that no one really cares about, but I kind of do. Like if there's one thing, it's not the great quarterback play necessarily. We're not going in the college football playoff talking about like 4 first-round quarterbacks, just battling it out. It's not like Caleb's in and Jaden's in and Drake May's in and Bo Nix is in. It's not that deal. Michael Penix is in. Like, it's not that deal like it would have been potentially a year ago. But what it is, it has a chance to be an absolute showcase of these running backs. And I feel like Ashton Genty's gotten all the attention when we're talking about running backs in college football. Colorado with Shador and Travis Hunter, a lot of attention. The quarterbacks always get a lot of attention, but it's not the group that we're used to having. I feel like from a personnel standpoint, the running backs have not, it has not been a consistent theme. It has been a bigger theme in the NFL this year. And I think college football, in the playoff, we're going to see a lot of star running backs now that we're condensed, right? 4 games the first week. You're talking about Tennessee. You're talking about Ohio State. 3 running backs that are going to be drafted in the first 3 rounds, okay? With Travion Henderson, Quinshon Judkins, and Sampson, right? Dylan Sampson. You go to Texas, Clemson. We'll go through the list. My point is, for whatever it's worth, I'm fascinated to see, like in an era of football, college and NFL, and even high school, where it's all about the quarterback and the receiver and all of that. I'm fascinated to see these running backs take off. I do want to mention from one scout, 2 guys he named, and 4 really he mentioned. He goes, the thing with this class, and I think this was intriguing. He's like, you got to figure out who your guy is. He's like,
Right.
we don't, we've never lived in a world where you have pick and choose from 35 running backs that legitimately are going to get gradable or draftable grades. We've never lived in that world. It's been a long, long time since we've been anywhere close to this. So you've got to pick who your guys are. And it's not by round. We'll stack the board later. But who are your guys? He's like, obviously, Ashton Ginty is cut above everybody. He said, but for me, when you start talking about value and fitting what we want to do and guys that I like, I'm going to plant the flag for, there are 4 guys that I really like, and they'll be in different ranges of the draft. He said, Jordan James from Oregon, Cam Scadaboo, Arizona State, and we'll see both of those guys in the playoff. 2 other guys I wanted to get to real quickly before we go through the rankings of the running backs in the playoff. Harvey from Central Florida, RJ Harvey, right? He said He has a third. He goes, I think he's 3rd round. I'm comfortable taking him in the 3rd round. Really likes him.
Huh.
And then another guy he said, I love, and I'd love to be able to steal him in the 4th round. Damian Martinez from Miami.
I love him too. Yeah.
I just thought that was interesting. So those are 4 running backs. He's like, we all recognize that you can go down the list and there are a whole bunch of guys, and but figure out who your guys are. And he goes, my guys beyond Ginty, in terms of where I think we can get them, are Jordan James, Oregon, Scadaboo, Arizona State, RJ Harvey, UCF, and Damian Martinez, Miami. Just thought that was interesting. Let's throw up this graphic. This is when I talk about running backs and loaded, and this is going to be the story, whether it comes out on broadcast or not. But when we look back at this college football playoff, it will be which quarterback steps up, undeniably. It will be about which defensive line was there in the 4th quarter to shut things down. But I think throughout this college football playoff, when we talk about the 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th round of this college football playoff, the consistent theme will be these running backs. 11 college football playoff running backs with grades in the top 5, Muench. 11. That's 11 out of 12 teams. That's
crazy.
Wild.
Yeah.
And they're 11 of the top 22 running backs in this loaded class, okay? Now, don't forget, too, this does not include Jeremiah Love, who I think is going to be an early round draft pick out of Notre Dame a year from now. He's a sophomore. And also Quintravion Wisner, who I don't put him in the same category as Love, but he's had a lot of success. Also a sophomore at Texas, okay? And there's Justice Ellison, who's going to be probably a late round pick from Indiana. There's some other later round guys. But these guys are all in the top 22 running backs in this class. Ginty obviously is going to be a top 10 pick, I believe. Worst case, top 15, and he'll only fall because there's not a need. Did I not upgrade this with my I guess I apparently. Oh no, that's right. I'm going through my running back list. I'm like, wait, what happened? What happened to
Caleb? Where's Caleb? Yeah,
where's Caleb Johnson? Yeah, because he's not playing in the college football playoff. Quinshon Judkins, I've got 66 overall from Ohio State. Jordan James, we just talked about him, 81 overall from Oregon. Scadaboo, the entire team basically of Arizona State, they're riding him into the college football playoff. Nicholas Singleton, I think because of his versatility, because he's got some explosiveness, I think he could be a top 100 pick. Travion Henderson from Ohio State, Trevor Etienne from Georgia, Dylan Sampson. I think this might be too low on Dylan Sampson. We'll see how it all plays out. But Dylan Sampson's going to be one of those guys. Tyson Lawton, I've told you, I like his juice and the energy he brings. I think he's going to be a surprise as a day 3 pick in the NFL draft. Brashard Smith, versatility, former wide receiver, explosive, catches the ball like a slot receiver. And then Phil Maffa has not had a huge year this year, but he's a grinder. When you see that list, what jumps out at you? And do you think, are you off on anything significantly in terms of rankings?
I'm such a contrarian, that's where right away I'm like, all right, where's he wrong? I want to move this guy above this guy. And I will say that I love Singleton. The more I watch Singleton, the more I keep thinking how dangerous he is. I love Dylan Sampson, like you are, just angry. Everything's so mad. Just a good player. So I don't really
stop down, Muench.
Yeah.
Your internet froze. Just start back up with I will say, I will say I love Singleton or something like that?
Yeah.
Or I will say. Just say I will say.
Okay. I will say that the more I watch Singleton, the more I like him. And the word that keeps coming to mind for me was dangerous. I mean, he's got that speed that he can break away. I also like his feet between the tackles, really good sifting through traffic. Dylan Sampson everything's mad, everything's angry, so hard to tackle. But look, all of these guys, you could start moving them around, and then you'd be like, oh, then you start realizing, well, maybe I want Scadaboo higher. What's going to be super important in this class is that pre-draft evaluation process. How do these guys run? How do they interview? How's the medical? All of that's going to be stuff that's going to help us separate because, again, and these are not even including the backs that, again, the Caleb Johnsons, the Amarian Hampton from North Carolina. These guys aren't even in this group because they're not in the playoff. It's going to be picking, like the scout said, or the front office guy who you talked to said, picking the guys that you like, having those debates. But I mean, I love them all. I want them all. That's kind of how I look at that list is like, I want them all.
I think the most important thing when you're evaluating, I remember having this conversation with Chris Spielman. We worked together for like 4 years, traveled. He's like extended family to me. I love Chris. He always said, like, the way I evaluate running backs when I watch them is who are the guys that are going to be obviously a pain in the ass to me as a linebacker. Excuse me, but who can create yards on their own? Like, who's going to basically run through me? Who am I fearful is going to run through me or is going to embarrass me in a little bit of space? And not in the open field. I'm talking about like little, like small spaces.
Right.
And so I've always kind of kept that in mind. I've had conversations with all sorts of personnel people. We talked about the conversations I had with, talking about the Broncos and the Redskins' success over the years and Shanahan's system and what fits and sticking your foot in the ground and accelerating in terms of that outside zone scheme. A lot of different conversations, but that's one that always stood out to me. It's like, and we now have the stat of forced missed tackles, right? And I'm not going to get into all those numbers. We have months to go through them all. What's going to intrigue me, though, and we could kind of wrap up on this unless you have a lot of other stuff, the matchups here, okay?
Right.
Dylan Sampson has faced a lot of talent. So I don't think that this is going to be a proving ground necessarily for him, but I sure as hell want to see him against this Ohio State front. Flip side, I want to see these two backs in an offense that has not been throwing the ball and that has been relying on their running backs and has an offensive line issue, as we saw against Michigan and going into the playoff against that defensive front that's absolutely freaking loaded for Tennessee. I want to see, like, Judkins, Henderson, can you create yards on your own? Can you big moment? Here we are. This is what we've all been waiting for, this college football playoff. Can you create yards that aren't blocked for you? Okay. Then I want to see the next round, Jordan James. Can you do that? The offensive line's been good. Great at offensive tackle for Oregon. Great out there. But in the interior, just okay. That's kind of a weakness of this team against Tennessee's front or Ohio State's front. I want to see, can he create yards against those defensive fronts? He hasn't faced a lot of those. Right. Truly, he hasn't. Faced a really good Penn State defense, had success. Maffa against Texas. Good luck.
That's fair. I think that's fair.
But Scadaboo versus Texas in round 2, now we're going to find out some stuff.
Right.
And he's probably not going to rush for 100 yards in that game. Maybe he will. We'll see. But can he create yards on his own against that ferocious front? Tyson Lawton that I talked about for Indiana. I think he's got juice. I think he can create in his own. Can he do it against a really good Notre Dame front? You know? I want to see Jeremiah Love, even though he's not a draft prospect, against the Georgia front. Then I want to see Penn State if they beat SMU. I mean, the one I'm dying to see, I think we all are, is Ashton Jeanty without a great passing game. He's got to be the guy versus a Penn State front, you know?
Right.
So this is, for scouts, this opportunity wasn't there. With a 4-team playoff, we wouldn't see Scadaboo against this level of competition. We wouldn't have that opportunity. Scadaboo wouldn't have that opportunity to showcase what he can do. Same for Jeanty. Wouldn't have had that opportunity to go up against a Penn State team. So these are great opportunities for these draft prospects.
Yeah, they're everywhere. I mean, Rashad Smith, the SMU running back in the first round against Penn State. Every game you look at, It just, there's talent everywhere. Every game you look at, there's some kind of interesting thing going on with the running back in terms of the matchup. It only gets better each round too.
This has been fun, man. And we'll keep doing this. And obviously, like, the buzz will get a lot more, directed towards NFL teams. Who's going to draft who? Who's going at number 3? Who's going to fall to number 4? What are the team needs? All that stuff. But this is a great time of year to just kind of unload the notebook. And I've enjoyed doing this. Honestly, in a couple of weeks, we can come back and do another one, mostly on the defensive side. And like the conversations I had about these defensive linemen, kind of the frustrations with some of the linebackers. Although I have one guy who could be, that's my guy on Thursday. I got to go watch his tape.
Sneaky.
He's a player who I have not evaluated, plays a linebacker position, wasn't a starter until this year in the 3rd game. A scout I talked to said he has a better grade on him than Peyton Wilson.
Really?
Yeah. So anyway, something to keep an eye on. There's a lot of stuff to talk on the defensive side. I'm excited. Thursday, we're going to preview the college games, and we have like who could be better out there. And we put a lot of thought in this. Not going to have a lot of coaches on this show, but you look at Billy Napier having faced 3 teams in the college football playoff. What insight he can bring in terms of previewing some of these games moving forward in the college football playoff. So that'll be Thursday. We'll also get into kind of some breakdowns, our own breakdowns of what we're expecting. FanDuel, we're gonna kind of hit it big on Thursday. I like finish the season strong. I'm ready. I'm ready to make it rich, Mensch.
Look at that flu medicine's kicking in.
I think so too. And then on Saturday, please join us. Like that, I think it could be the most. I mean, how could it not be the best show of the entire year of our entire existence? Right, Saturday night.
Great, yeah.
We got 1 game Friday night. Saturday night, we got 3 games. We got a noon kick, a 4 p.m. Eastern kick, and an 8 p.m. Eastern kick. And after that Tennessee-Ohio State game, the primetime game, we're going to be right here, you and me. Maybe Russillo will jump on if he wants. We can live with him or live without him. My recruiting speech. But we'll have a blast on Saturday night. And we appreciate everyone who has been a part of this ride with us. Please spread the news. We're just trying, like I always say, little engine that could, trying to make it through. But we're excited for Thursday as a preview, and then Saturday night a review. Please join us. Anything else, Mensch? Any words of wisdom you want to impart as we leave?
I got nothing.
Getting ready for the holidays.
I'm excited.
You got the Santa beard going, man.
Yeah, always. I'm really excited for Saturday night, man. That's our Christmas gift. I think it's going to be.
I think so too.
First year of like the wider playoff. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Appreciate everyone joining. We'll see you soon. Must be 21 plus and present in select states. For Kansas, in affiliation with Kansas Star Casino, or 18 plus and present in DC. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER or visit rg-help.com. Call 1-888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org/chat in Connecticut, or visit mdgamblinghelp.org in Maryland. Hope is here. Visit gamblinghelplinema.org or call 1-800-327-5050 for 24/7 support in Massachusetts, or call 1-877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY in New York.